so the first step in this whole process is working on your thumbnails. So you're going to be getting a piece of computer paper, which you can see I've done, and I'm going to be folding it in four. So that's how you get the four different areas. And the point of this is just to start working on what you want your theme to be. So I drew out the type of font I wanted. This one's based off the arts. So I have the paint, brush with the palette, ballet slipper, clay vessel, drama mass. This one I started working on birds, looking up different types of birds, and even though it's not A, B, C, D, I wanted to draw the flamingo, so you can choose whatever letters you want to get the idea out. This one has to do with my figures doing different poses, and like this one's holding an apple, that's a bird. I was thinking maybe something nautical that has like an anchor, coral, buoy. You can see I'm trying to tie in the alphabet part of this. This one is just the straight up font. So this is working on like Old English, stylized, there's serif on it, and then it's got your design in the background. But the one I actually landed on, which is more of a transformation than an actual alphabet with an object, are these like critters. So I want it to be very cartoon-like and have these animals. So I started working on this, and I was going to show you some of the design. You can see I've tried the D a couple different ways. So I'm still working on, what's gonna work best for this. Putting in the eyes. This is naturally like a nose, but I don't really like the way that looks. So I was thinking about maybe making it like a mouth that just goes a different way. So this technically would be where his nose is, and then adding some sort of like design to it. So basically going through and trying out some of these letters. The point of this is to get what you want your design to be. So this is the one I'm feeling out of all these different things. So now I'm gonna work on the actual whole alphabet, scheduling out sort of what these are gonna look like as I go. Or you can make a list. So have your, let's say I wanted to do all locations. So for each one, like I'll say A is gonna be for, Alaska. And let's say F is for Florida. So you can start like filling in what each of the things are gonna be, and that's gonna help you plan all this out, which is what you need to do. So that's the planning phase. I'll take you into the next phase, which is making the grid. Next up, we're gonna be making the grid. So this is gonna be a 3 by 4 inch grid. So I'm gonna start on this edge and mark out 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, and it goes to 24. And then I'm gonna be doing the same thing on the opposite end of this. You'll notice in all my videos when I measure stuff out, I usually just slide the ruler up rather than slide the paper. That's because a lot of times these things in the paper mill will get cut and you'll lose little tiny millimeters here or there, which end up making a big difference later on because it warps the grid. So I always make sure that I sort of just move the ruler rather than flip it. All right, then this is my 3 inch one. So 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, and then it goes to 18. And do the same thing on this edge. I'll just leave a little gap there. 3, 6, 9, 12, 15. And then holding this ruler in place. Making sure that goes line to line. Pressure in the center, all 4 fingers. Hold your pencil slightly back. Get a nice line across. And then just keep sliding up. You're gonna do the same thing. All right, so I'm gonna finish up this grid and then I'll show you what the next step is, okay? Okay, now that we're on to the next step, the first thing you're gonna find is this whole piece is actually more than 26, which is what we need for the alphabet. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 by 6. So we got 36, we have 10 extra. So depending on which way you're having the paper go, so you can do it portrait style or landscape. So depending on what your theme is, for me, portrait's gonna be working best. So I'm gonna be cutting off these 6 at least, and then I'll probably end up using some special characters like a question mark, exclamation, maybe start some numbers. So that's something to think about as you make this, is there's gonna be some other stuff. Some people also put a title, like my alphabet or something there, to kick it off. That's up to you. but you will end up with some extra boxes regardless of which way you do it, even when you cut stuff out. So that's the way I'm going to position mine. So I've got my sketch with some of my basic ones. I'm going to start. For mine, I'm actually going to do all the letters first. So like sketch out exactly how I want these letters to look, and then I'm going to transform them in. So it's up to you if you wanted to start on each one and go all the way to the finish and then work to the next one. But I find when you're doing something that's cohesive and it's one big piece, if you do all of it step by step together at the same time, it'll look like it's been developed together. Because you don't want to start with A, and as you go on, you get all the way to Z, you've gotten drastically better as you went. So if you work on a little bit, like do the eyes of every single one, do the mouth of every single one, they're going to look like they're all conceived and done at the same time, which is what we want when we do a collective thing like the whole alphabet. Okay, so let's go right into the A, and I'll show you the drawing of that. Okay, so for my particular piece, I want these letters to take up the majority of the paper. So I'm gonna leave a little bit of a gap here. I'm also gonna leave a little bit of a gap here. So these are just guiding lines for me. And based off the letter, I also wanna leave a little bit of a gap on the edges. So it might be hard to see on the camera, but I'm really not pushing down like super hard. Let this come in a little bit more. And you'll see all these sketchy lines. That's why I'm barely pushing down, because I don't want it to end up not being able to disappear. Also rounded edges. So depending on what type of font you pick, I want this to come up about here. Match this angle, rounded edge. Match this angle, rounded edge. And then the center is going to be a part of the design, so I'm not really focusing on the center part, just the outer line. So there's one letter. I'm going to do that for all 26 right at the start. Give myself my guiding line. Go through. Notice the space between everything is the same, so it's centered up. And then I'm going to work on the next letter. Same thing, leave a space. I'm making sure this sort of ends up in the same area. You can drag your pencil across. This one is going to be rounded and down. And this B is going to be smaller on the top, wider on the bottom. And then this one, I got a little too much space over there, so I need to extend it out. So it's all about just sort of filling in the space appropriately and adjusting things as you go, barely pushing down so that I don't leave any of those marks. I'm actually going to give this a different angle. There we go, that looks better. I want all these to have sort of the same feel. So I'm going to do all the letters, and then I'll take you back to see the next step. Okay, so I now have all my letters drawn out. I'll show you they're all roughly about the same size. I added my own character, so I did a question mark, ampersand, dollar sign, as well as the out symbol to fill up the space. This side I'm going to end up getting rid of, but I am going to leave it on there for now in case I want to practice the coloring stuff, so I have the same surface paper. So that's why that's still there. The next part of this is going to be getting these critters into the actual drawing themselves. So I'm just going to show you the A all the way through, and then I'll be working on the other ones off screen. But I wanted to just show you the transfer of one of these. Okay, let's just make sure you can see those. Okay, so I'm actually going to move this part down a little bit and widen it so it matches my theme a little better. I'm going to make it a little tilted. I'll make it more cartoon-like. These eyes, pretty similar in size, slightly inward. I'm going to bring those horns down just a little bit and try to get them pretty symmetrical. And then I'm just going to add on want that almost to be like a mask, like a bandit. Okay, and that's really all there is to it. I'm gonna go through and do the rest of these, and then we'll talk about color and some finishing touches on each block, okay? Okay, so just so you're able to see, I have all these finish off, so I've gone through and designed each of my characters here. And now I'm going to begin the coloring process. Okay, so we're on to the coloring portion of this. We're going to be using some graphic markers. These are watercolor based, alcohol based markers that you can use for this. So I have a couple different brands. This is the Prismacolor Premier. So they come with a brush as well as a fine tip. I've also got similar, except this one's chisel with a fine tip. So there's one brand. And then I also have, so the ones that I actually prefer and that I use are the Aquapen Graphics. These have a brush as well as a chisel, or a fine tip as well. A bigger color selection, although you can get pretty much any color in Prismacolor. You can just order them separately. Both are a little more on the higher end, expensive, but definitely worth it. So before I actually start showing you how to use these, and I wouldn't consider myself, a master at these yet. I'm still learning myself, but I did do a lot of practice. So before I actually went on to do one of these final ones, I spent a lot of time like trying to mix stuff. I had to color pencil on one, seeing the drying rates, like when you can actually outline something without it bleeding, some texture stuff. So I would definitely say you should try these out before you actually go right into the final one. So I'm actually going to redraw some of this onto my little character here, and then for the final one, I'll just be doing these off camera and then show you what it looks like when all the monsters are done. So here's my markers. I'm going to start with some blending techniques. I'm going to take two different purples, and I'm going to try and blend so it's a shadow, so like everything on this side will be the darker side, and then it'll go light. So depending on the paper you have, this will bleed through and could potentially sort of bleed on the top of the paper and move out further than your lines. So depending on what paper you have, just be careful of that and make sure you test it out first. I'm just gonna start by outlining this and just filling it in. So ideally, these markers are supposed to sort of not leave any streaks. You can see them start to move around in there. And then I'm going to take my darker color, which is this purple here, and outline on this side, and start to drag some of the color over. You won't see much of the blending yet because I actually have to do that with the lighter color. I'm just going to bring some of the dark in, so bring it about halfway. They do make colorless blenders too that you can get, or you can just use the lighter color and sort of clean the tip after. You can see on this art sheet I was testing some out and cleaning the tip after because it will stain with the other color. And I'm going to take this and start to go back and forth between the two. You can see it start to blend and give you that like ombre effect. And then it's even pulling up some of the harshness of the paper. So you gotta be careful that you don't oversaturate this. And then I clean the tip just like that, so that on the next color, I don't end up pulling in the dark purple. All right, so there's an ombre right there. I'm gonna do the same thing with the green right above it, and then I'm gonna show you the outline and let it dry a little bit, okay? So actually, before I do the outline, I'm just gonna show you a couple other shading techniques. I'm gonna do the horns here for you, the eyes and the mouth, so you can see them in person. So I already went through into that ombre effect on the other pieces, like I said I was going to. So I know this probably doesn't show up that well on camera, but this is just really light gray. I'm just gonna give a really light shadow on the side here. Same thing, drag this up. Okay, and then the eyes, I'm gonna start with this light yellow. And this one, while it's still wet like that, I'm gonna pull in. Little shadow. All right, for the mouth, I'm gonna start with this light pink. Oh, I guess not that light. Another reason we should be testing our colors. That is a lot brighter than I thought it was gonna be. Yeah, I don't really care for that. Let's tone that back. I'm gonna put some red over it. There, that looks better. Actually, we'll leave a little bit of the pink and blend that out. Okay, and this tongue, let's see. I'm actually gonna use one of my Prismacolors here. Oh, this light pink. Maybe add a touch of the red into there. Okay, so I'm gonna let this dry a little bit. You can tell it's wet too, and the paper's starting to tear. You see these little pieces of the paper fiber coming up. So I'm just gonna let that sit for a little bit, and then I'm gonna show you the outline, which should hopefully make a big difference in terms of the graphics of this, okay? Okay, so this has had a chance to dry. I went through and got rid of all the little pieces of paper that come up, and I made the mistake of doing it a little too soon, so there's your warning on that, as it can smear through. I've got a black Prismacolor, and instead of using the brush side, which is this, I'm gonna be using the fine point to start going through. So hopefully it doesn't smear too badly because I've gone through and let it dry a little bit. Our eyes. And I want this to be actually a little bit sketchy. Going through and leaving some of that line work. So there's the outline. I'm going to be adding in stripes. And then I'm just going to add a couple of lines on the outside here. All right, that adds a little more movement to them. I guess a stylized look. So there's the finished monster there. I also added on my practice round a shadow on it. So depending on what effect you're going for, you can add that shadow into it too using a chisel tip or a brush tip. Okay, that's the basics of it. I'm gonna work on the actual final product and show you what that looks like when all of them are done together. And I'm still toying around with the background, so we'll see what I end up picking for that, or if I leave them all just on the white here. So I'll be showing you the finished project in just a second. Okay, so here's my finished up alphabet. So you can see I went through and colored everything, as well as added my black outline on top of it all. So that's what they're gonna look like when they're done. We're using these graphic markers, but of course you've got some other color options as well. So good luck, and I hope things turn out great.